everybody, and welcome to my first Paint With Me video. In this video, I am painting some illustrations for a course I did online. I follow an illustrator named Kat Coquelette, and she has some Skillshare courses. And one of the ones that she did was about making repeating patterns with hand-drawn or hand-painted illustrations, and I decided to take part in this course. I am not sponsored by Skillshare or anything like that. I just happen to enjoy the platform. I decided to do this course because 1, it interested me, 2, I like Kat's courses, and 3, she was also giving away a free year of premium Skillshare subscription, and so I thought it would be fun to just enter that anyways. Spoiler, I did not win, but I did have fun doing this nonetheless. You can see me right now just sketching out my little motifs that I want to paint. I'm currently using a water-soluble colored pencil. My reasoning for this was that I could do my sketching, and as I paint, the water-soluble pencil will simply just dissolve into my design, so you won't see that original sketch. And anything outside of the design kind of doesn't matter, because for this technique, after we've painted and drawn our motifs, we scan it and do editing in Photoshop. So I can just at that point delete anything outside of my design. But anything within the design, all the pencil marks will simply dissolve because I'm using that watercolor pencil, which it worked out perfectly fine. The technique that I am using is somewhat new to me. I've been interested in experimenting with watercolor and colored pencils together, and so I thought I would take this opportunity to give that technique a try. The paper that I am painting on that you see in front of me is just a student grade cold pressed watercolor paper from my local art store. It is not the best quality, but it is pretty good for learning. It's 140 pounds, so it's thick enough to take the water media. If I was to do this again, and I probably will actually, I want to try this again on a smoother paper. I don't think this was the right paper for me to try to do this colored pencil. I mean, it works fine for the watercolor, but I found that it wasn't the best for the colored pencil, at least not for the look that I was hoping to get. I would like to try it again with maybe a hot pressed watercolor paper or a smoother mixed media. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to pull out some papers and experiment. So the next step that you see me doing here is going over my rough, loose sketch with standard colored pencils. Now that I've made all my sketchy construction marks and know the sizes and locations of the petals and whatnot, I am going to use these regular pencils because I want these lines to be a part of the final illustration. It was around this point that I started to realize that perhaps this was not the best paper for this particular technique. Like I said, it does great for watercolor, not so awesome with the colored pencils. My lines were very wobbly, and it was very difficult. Later you'll see me doing some shading. It was very difficult to get a nice gradiated shading on such a textured paper, but I kept going anyways. I decided to try this technique because I'm still trying to find my style or my artistic voice. And it's very hard for me to decide on a technique that I can adapt as mine, because there's so many that I like. There's so many illustrators and artists and their techniques, their medias, their subject matter. So many things appeal to me. So I think I'm just at this stage in my development where I'm going to be trying a lot of different things, just to see what'll stick, and maybe one of them will be just so amazing that I can't not do it and I'll just keep doing that. More likely, or what I've sort of learned about trying to find your style, more likely what'll happen is, because I'm going to experiment with so many different things, that eventually I will end up with sort of a creative stew, I guess, of my own style, you know, like you might like this part of this person's technique, but you might like it more done this style or in this media, or maybe you like it more on this different particular surface, or this particular subject matter, or these color palettes. You take little bits from everything that you try and they stick, and that is what makes your own style. So that is what I'm hoping is going to happen here, and I hope you'll stick with me, because for the first little while here in my channel, you may notice I'm going to experiment a lot with different styles, techniques, media. There's just so many things that I really love to do and I'm really curious about. So yeah, it's a part of the journey. I decided to pull out my kneaded eraser and just sort of dab up some of the excess colored pencil, maybe lighten it just a little bit, and then onto the watercolor. You can see the water-soluble colored pencil that I did my sketch with is dissolving here and just sort of adding to the yellow, which is kind of cool. And then I'm doing sort of a wet and wet, getting the center of the motif wet, and then I'm going back in with my actual paint and just working from the tips of the petals out so that I can concentrate on getting the shapes nice and clean, but the center is already wet, so the paint will just sort of blend together in the center. Once I've gotten myself a nice even base wash of my light yellow here, I did decide that I would try to add some darker colors, or a darker color to the center, because the center of it's a little bit dark, and I wanted to give that a bit of a, you know, a darker base coat. And then of course I put too much on, so I went back with just a clean brush that I'd sort of just towel dried a little bit and sort of picked up and pushed some of that darker color back. I also decided I wanted to try to put a little bit of color variance in the petals, so I mixed a little bit of a purple color in with my yellow to get this very muted purpley browny color, and just touched it to the tip of some of the petals. At this point I still wasn't 100% sure if I was going to like it, but it did end up working out in the end. When deciding what subject or theme to do my pattern on, I explored a few different options. Most were floral, actually. They just seemed the easiest to me to make a pattern of at this point. And I settled on sunflowers, not only because they're just happy and bright, and who doesn't love a sunflower, But my mind has been, as I'm sure a lot of other people across the world, has been on the situation in the Ukraine right now, and just sitting back in disbelief and sadness that such a thing is occurring in this day and age. My heart goes out to the people of Ukraine and the fear and anger and uncertainty they must be living through right now. A little unknown fact about me is that my ancestry is from the Ukraine. My last name, Bazuta, actually originates from the Ukraine, and I don't know too much about the family history as my father left when I was very little, but I did do one of those Ancestry.ca DNA tests. It does show my ancestry coming from the Ukraine's Eastern Europe, and it looks like my family line probably migrated to North America in the early 1900s, probably around the time of World War I would imagine. But it's kind of cool to look back and see those things. But anyways, that's kind of the things that were on my mind while I was picking my theme for this pattern. Here's a little close-up of me mixing some of my colors. I was using Quinacridone Gold by Daniel Smith, and my lighter yellow was New Gamboge by Winsor Newton, and the bit of purple that I was using to tone it down was actually Winsor Newton's Permanent Magenta. I then go back over all my motifs with a second layer of more pigmented paint, so it's darker. And the goal here is just to differentiate some of the shapes, like the center of all the flowers, and darken maybe some of the petals in the background so they look like they're in shade, and it will give the illustrations more of a feeling of depth. Doing this course and these illustrations reminded me that it's really important to continue to try different things, even if you think you might suck at it or not be as good as other people, because it doesn't matter what you think, you'll never know until you try. And I think that's really important, and I think that that's something that we often forget as artists, because we have this need to want to make everything perfect. We want everyone to see, that we are truly worthy of the name artist. When picking my colors for these illustrations, I didn't want to do them too realistic. Obviously, I wanted the sunflowers themselves to be yellow because it's a sunflower. But for the leaves, I didn't want to just do realistic green. I wanted them to feel sort of more turquoisey. So I used a few different colors. I used light washes of cobalt blue by Daniel Smith, as well as some aqua green by Winsor Newton. And then again, I dotted in a little bit of that permanent magenta, that purpley color that I was using in the petals, with the hopes that it would sort of help bring the different elements together. And now here we are at the last part of the hand-drawn part of this illustration. I'm going back over everything again with colored pencils. I just chose a few colored pencils that were
close in colors to the watercolors I had already used, and I was adding just some lines and some shadow and some warmth. And here's one of the parts where I was trying to get a nice smooth gradient and realized it wasn't really working too well on this textured paper. Well, lesson learned. I decided that I wanted to add more of an outline to all the petals. I wasn't going to originally, I was going to just leave them sort of more natural looking, but I really like an outline, so I started to do that. I did find that adding these last little details with the colored pencils really did help me feel like it was kind of more pulled together. And there's kind of a close-up of one of them all finished with its various stages. And it was sort of rinse and repeat for all the other motifs. Every now and then I felt like I needed a brighter glow to the petals. So I brought out this bright lemon yellow colored pencil and just went over, not all the petals, but just every so often went over a couple of petals to bring out the sunny warmth. And then I did the exact same thing for the stems and leaves. I didn't go over with a second wash on these parts. I just went straight from first wash to the colored pencil. I think because they were sort of secondary in my mind and I didn't really need them to stand out or bring as much attention as the actual main flower parts. And again, I just grabbed a few colored pencils that were similar to the watercolors that I used. I cleaned up the edges a little bit, tried to add some shading, but like I said, as I mentioned, the shading was very difficult to do on with colored pencils on this textured paper. All in all, I think it took me about 2.5, maybe 3 hours to do all of these different illustrations. You can see, it's a good thing I'm going to cut these out in Photoshop later because I have I moved my arm and the sleeve of my shirt dragged right through the watercolor paint, smearing it. So typically me, I get paint all over the place, but it's a good thing I was going to be cleaning it up in Photoshop anyways. I didn't record a lot of the digital process of this particular project because, I mean, it's kind of boring, but I thought I would just throw this in here. It's just a little bit of me cleaning up all of the extra crap, the speckles that I got on the paper and the parts where I smeared my sleeve right through the paint. I am working in Photoshop on my iPad Pro. For this, I find it easier to do this sort of thing with the pencil. Really had a lot of fun with this project, and I think I'm definitely going to do some more. I came up with a few ideas while I was brainstorming for what I was going to do for this pattern, and I have like a lot of ideas. My brain has just started to kind of run with all of the things that I could do, all the cool patterns and the subjects and themes and stuff like that, and all the different medias that I could do. I mean, I could have done all of these motifs completely digitally and still had similar results. So yeah, this has been really fun, and a positive reflection upon trying something new that I could have totally screwed up. I mean, it's not probably the best work I have ever done, nor the best work I will ever do, but I'm pretty happy with it. And I mean, it's good enough that I have it uploaded on both my Redbubble and my Society 6 shops for a bunch of the different products there. So I'm not that. So, you know, obviously I didn't think it was that bad. Thank you for joining me on this first attempt at a Paint With Me video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I would like to try to do more Paint With Me's in the future. I was a little nervous to do this one, but it turned out okay. If you have made it all the way to the end of this, you must have liked it, so please consider subscribing, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye!